Let's talk about the Big 12. I told you the other night, I was not lying to you. This is the conference I'm most excited to watch this year. It's the conference where anything could happen. There is no clear favorite. There are about 6 or 7 teams that you reasonably could make an argument for winning. And the odds right now, just to give you an idea, Oklahoma's the favorite currently to win the conference. They're plus 190. Texas plus 250. Oklahoma State plus 450. Baylor returns a better quarterback. Their entire O-line and D-line, they're plus 650 odds, 4th best team, according to odds makers, to win the conference this year. So let's talk about this conference. Let's talk about a few teams, then I'll show you how we think the whole thing's going to shake out.
Talk about Baylor.
Yeah, I'll talk about Baylor. You don't need to tell me twice. Preview magazine culture is going to tell you that there is a lack of proven players for Baylor this year. And it's not something that you've heard me say. It's not something I will say because the culture and the system are proven, which is going to lead to year over year you finding out mid-season Baylor had the players all along. My favorite preview magazine didn't know their names. I didn't know their names. I got fooled into thinking that meant they were weaknesses. When they've been brought through and developed by that system they've got, they're going to be fine. They're going to be just fine. And let me also remind you, we don't need to reiterate, but remember, they chose to go in a different direction at quarterback than the guy who took them to the Big 12 championship game last year. They've got their entire O-line and D-line back. They've got the nucleus of that team back. You're going to hear a lot about linebacker, secondary, who's he going to throw the ball to? They'll be there. I have full confidence. The pieces will be there. The pieces will emerge. Let's take a look, as I think this program has staying power, at what the model thinks. Does the model agree? What's the best case for Baylor this year? Best case is 11-1. In a wide open conference, of course, if you can win every game, 11-1 could happen. 6-6 is tough for me to see, even in the worst of times, but 6-6 is the worst case. Our prediction is lofty. We got Baylor going 10-2, which, if I'm not mistaken, may be good enough to win the conference. I don't know. We'll find out in a couple of minutes.
Let's talk about Oklahoma.
Talk about the Sooners, okay? You know what is interesting here, aside from just everything's new, is combining Jeff Lebby at offensive coordinator with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. And overall, perhaps still the best talent roster when you account for development in the Big 12. Their secondary, I don't know how much improvement we'll see. It will be immediately improved just because Brenton Venables lives in that area code now. It'll be immediately improved. I think offensively, even though you can make the argument that they could be explosive offensively, I just think they'll be less and less reliant on needing fireworks. You know, I think they'll be a little more reliant on a sustainable kind of offense. There's a little bit less fluctuation. Now, maybe you trade not scoring 45 or 50 points as often, but if you can score 34 routinely, I'll take that. I think that this is going to be a really good team this year. They'll get better as the season goes on. I don't think you need to wait 2 or 3 years. This is a ready-made product. Remember, they didn't fire Lincoln Riley. He chose to leave, so things weren't going poorly. Could they go even better? Recruiting, in short term, has already said yes. What does the model say Oklahoma will be on the field this year? Best case, 11-1. Worst case, 7-5. The prediction for Oklahoma this year, we got them right there. 10-2. There's some up and down. There is some volatility in the Big 12, but at the end of the day, if they're 10-2, which is what the model thinks they will be, they're right there in contention for the Big 12 championship game. Remember, there are no divisions here, so just the 2 best teams go to the championship game. Next up.
Horns up or horns down for Texas?
Could it be somewhere in the middle? We'll see. Texas is the most volatile out of all the Power 5 teams when it comes to the best case and the worst case. Their over-under win totals 8.5, which is down from 9 last week, so we got that under just in time. If Quinn Ewers is the man, let's talk about best case. If Quinn Ewers is the man and this passing game clicks, they can win the Big 12. No 2 ways about it. But also, response is a very important word for them this year. Remember last year they lost to Oklahoma. Steve Sarkisian admitted at the end of the year, I never got that team back. Bo Davis had that epic rant on the bus, which we played on the show. We are big Bo Davis fans on the show. He said what needed to be said. Ideally, players would have been saying that, but a coach had to say it. All that means what? How much did you improve? How far have you come? Well, you won't find out when things are good. You'll find out when you see a bump in the road. Maybe it's week 2 against Alabama. How do you respond? Response is what will determine the outcome of this season for them. Let's take a look at the best case. The best case for Texas is they respond admirably, and they go 10-2 this year. And that's probably getting them to the Big 12 championship game, because Bama loss is probably in that 10-2. The worst case is 5-7. That would be missing a bowl again, and that would be bowlless in the first 2 years of Steve Sarkisian. That wouldn't be fun. The model says 8-4 for Texas. That hits the under, but there's this weird place in my mind that still thinks it's a good year. And something at least tangible and solid has happened. They've had some downs, but they've had a few more ups. In that 8-4 world, we finally get to ask what bowl game Texas is going to. So 8-4, I know you guys want more, but at least disaster didn't strike with 8-4, and you're trending in the right direction. Okay, let's take a look at the overall conference picture here in the Big 12. This one is so hard. Big 12, hardest conference to predict in America. We've got Baylor and Oklahoma, each going 10-2. That is our Big 12 championship game. To give you an idea of how this conference shakes out behind it, Oklahoma State at 9-3, Texas at 8-4, my Iowa State Cyclones at 7-5. Everyone's sleeper. I mean, I know a guy in Singapore, doesn't speak a lick of English, never seen the sport in his life, except to say that Kansas State is his sleeper this year. TCU, West Virginia, that's how it shakes out on down the line a little bit. Oklahoma versus Baylor. I've got Oklahoma over Baylor in the Big 12 championship game. My thinking is if OU gets themselves into that game, that means they have bought themselves enough time to round into a form that I think, when at its best, is going to be too difficult to overcome. Baylor in the Big 12 championship game again, but ultimately we have Oklahoma winning that thing.